diving back into what we started talking about, messing around with last Wednesday night was the anger resolution. And we decided to do the phase 2 after talking about trauma bonding, because when you're trauma bonded to somebody, it makes you really mad because you're really hurt. And the trauma itself has things at a base that will cause problems, right? So here's how it works. Anger is a secondary emotion. And so that means there's stuff down here that's causing this up here. If we can't identify this, if we can't unpack this, if we can't put this away, if we don't know how to process it, this is going to constantly be an irritant, which you're going to look like you're angry all the time. And anger can look like crying, punching a hole in the wall, hurting yourself, talking trash to others. I mean, it comes in so many flavors, doesn't it? And but at the same time, a very angry person is a very hurt person. Now, let's just say that you travel up this chart. There should be steps to get up this chart. Steps to get to the point that you're like, okay, now I'm mad. And it's the same thing when you leave this level past 10. There should be steps that take you up to a place of rage. Do we want to go to rage ever? No, we don't want to go to rage ever, because it's a real problem for ourselves and other people. And rage really believes that I don't care about you and I don't believe you care about me, so anything goes at this point. And all that can happen within seconds, just boom, really angry. So if this is a secondary emotion, what does anger say? What's the purpose of anger? It says, I want something to stop. So the purpose of it is an emotion that's not, a lot of times people think it's absolute sin, but the Bible says this. It says, you can be angry, but sin not in your anger. There's a difference. Be angry about something because you want it to stop, right? But it could look just like I look right now. I could be upset about, taxes or the government new rules that are coming down the pike. Am I upset about that? Yes. I want that to stop. But I don't have to come above this emotion to let everybody know. No, I need you to really know that I'm angry. Well, then I'm going to jump from the bottom all the way to 10, and I'm going to hurt myself and others during that, really just to show people that I'm mad. And so if we know it's a secondary emotion, then last week we talked about, a kettle or a bucket of pain. And this bucket of pain has layers to it. The things that have happened long ago are at the very bottom. These are all things we haven't unpacked, we haven't put away, we haven't taken care of. And these are the fresh things that are on the top. Well, the problem is you can have thousands and millions of memories. I'm 58 years old. I probably got millions and millions of memories. Every little thing, every little breath, every place I've ever gone, 24 hours in a day, I'm remembering stuff. The subconscious records everything. And it records it in such a way that it records it through your 5 senses, right? So your 5 senses, it records through sight and hearing and touch and all of those different things. And in the past, when we were talking about trauma, which is something that happens to you that makes you feel like someone's subtracted away from you, and it's very hurtful. When that happens and we're in a spot where we feel like someone's violated us or used violence against us. I know I could violate you when you came in tonight just by looking down at my phone and then looking up and go, and then look over and talk to Dave. That's a violation. I'm subtracting from you. So it doesn't always, usually we will think of, there was violence. Axe murder or something, really intense if we say something like that. The same way is in my background, when somebody would get angry, if someone said they're angry, that means somebody's being choked, dragged across the floor. There is some type of thing. But, we use the word anger or angry. So like flippantly, we'll just be like, oh, a lady at the store was so ticked off this morning. Well, what does so ticked off mean? If you grew up with so ticked off and it meant someone was pacing and they were threatened with a Glock and they're like, I'm mad now. Or was it just she went and walked off? Yeah, she was really ticked off. It all depends on your filter, how you even use the word anger. And that comes out of all the traumas and all the training or lack of training. That is what we call the bucket of pain. Okay? This is what got us to where we were last week. When there's so many things that we haven't brought to closure, many times we know when this comes out, the lid pops off, this thing starts, there's flames down here, which is called a slow burn. This thing gets hot in your brain, your bottom part of your brain will trump the top part of your brain, and suddenly you can't think, and we do some really stupid things. Sometimes it's no different than drinking or smoking pot or doing some kind of drug, right? Because we're so angry we cannot even, focus because there's been a slow burn of this thing. And that's fine because nothing boiled over. But when this heat gets turned up because somebody over here, which we talked about before, triggers it, or you could say it this way, they added another log to the fire. You ever see a pilot light? We talked about this in phase 1 where we got a little heater in our modular building, and we keep that running to make sure the pipes don't freeze over the wintertime. But it is a gas little heater on the wall, and you'll see the pilot light, and then when Vern turns it up, it's like, whoosh, the whole panel goes red because it got lit, right? But there was fire in there the whole time. So it isn't like you say, well, there's no heat in there. I don't know. There was fire in there, just like this here. But if something triggers that and you're like, I am not doing this again. I am not experiencing this pain. You guys can forget it. I am not, all of a sudden, this starts to get lit. And we skip these steps many times. This little blow off, things start flying out, and we'll go, I'm at a 7. Well, how'd you get there? I don't know. I'm at a 10. How did you get to a 10? Did you walk up those steps? No. I don't know. I'm at a 10. And part of that is because the power of self-control keeps us below a 5. And we're actually more cognitive when we're below 5. We're more effective. We can draw boundaries better. And when we want something to stop, we're very effective under 5. But if we can get, or we have been shown, that you just go, I felt something, lid flies off, I'm at 10. Well, now you're out of control in a heartbeat. That would be a person, when you experience that you're literally afraid of yourself. Because you're like, hey, don't say that to me. We're not going to talk about that. I've had enough of that. We start giving out warnings because we know if this pops off, we're at a 10. We're not at a 3. We know there's no steps in between for us. So if this says I want something to stop, then what does rage say? Rage says the thing I want to stop, I don't believe it ever will. I don't believe you care about me, and I don't care about you because you don't care about me. So anything goes. Rage. And we went over this in the first phase, but I have to take us back to this now. It's very important to know there is pain involved in anger. There's pain. And so your subconscious records everything. It works on these problems 24 hours a day. Whether you think you're sleeping really well at night or not, it's working on the, hey, what is going on? Why is this like this? How could they say this to me? I'm so upset, right? So each of these things has got to be brought to closure. If we're in the habit of not having closure, then we're in the habit of hoarding thoughts. And when we're a hoarder, we just throw a bunch of stuff in the vehicle, right? And we never do anything with it. Yeah, I got to take that to the thrift store. I got to take care of that later. I got to get that to my mom's. And it just piles up. And then if we do get it out of our vehicle, we hoard it in some room in the house. Most people hoard, statistically, in their bedroom. And it represents in the brain, yes, please. It represents in the brain, thank you, Dave. When you're doing that, it says, my intimate space means nothing because I mean nothing. So we might as well just put a bunch of junk in here. Nothing positive comes out of this room anyway. I'm a fail when it comes to this, this, and this, as a man, as a woman, whatever it is in this space. And other things that people do in the house, statistically, is they'll set up their workstation in their bedroom, and they'll say, well, I don't have any other space to do it. Well, now you have intimacy in the bedroom, and you have your work in the bedroom. How do you think that's going to fly? That's not going to fly well, because your brain's not going to separate that out. You're either at work or you're at home, right? And you're either going to be attentive to one or the other. So if you have a computer or something in your bedroom, I'd get it out of there. I'd find a different way, right? And so when pain gets triggered, that means something new can be happening right now that hits the old pain. It's a new event, but it hits the old pain. And what it does is it comes in and it grabs anything that's related to what's going on right now. All of these are related to rejection, for instance. And that turns up the pilot light. The whole panel gets hot. The lid pops off. Things are flying left and right. And then we find ourselves at a 10 and we don't know how we got there. We're out of control. We're shaking. And we don't know how we got there. And, the other part, since we've talked about trauma bonding and, trauma's happening, is many times we are not just mad about this because it hurts, right? These are that first emotions, the emotions that say, I feel rejected, I feel left out, I feel pushed away, I feel shunned. Those are feelings that are caught inside of us that we're not processing. And so the secondary emotion says, I'm about had it with those feelings. I don't want to feel that. So stop making me feel that. And we'll say, I want something to stop, and boom, we go to 10. And if it doesn't look in a blink like that's going to work, boom, we're at rage. And rage says, I'll hurt myself even. I'll do whatever I can to get this somehow under control. This down here feels like there is no control. I don't have any rights, right? I just store boxes of pain. That's what I do. I have a filing system, and now it's overloaded, so we just shove boxes in the back. And we'll get to it, though. One day I'm going to hire a secretary or something. We'll get to it. But you're not. You're not going to get to it. It's compounding. So, and then, just finding that out sometimes makes people mad because they're like, well, that ticks me off. Why do I have to go clean that? Because you can't skip it, right? It can make you mad when someone shows you this and you go, yep, that's what my brain looks like. It's hoarding up there. I don't know how to keep this suppressed while dealing with the new things that are coming in. And I'm supposed to deal with them now. Well, to deal with them now means you would have required or acquired a skill to deal with them. And if you had that skill, these would be being dealt with. The skill's got to come first. I'm not a big believer, there's a breakup, right? A lot of times people have a breakup and they'll be like, you've heard me say this before, maybe the guy was slapping the woman around or something like that. Major thing, they come to a thing and they're going to break up and now they're separated. And then he calls her, baby, I love you. I love you. I didn't mean anything I said. And then she'll call me and she'll be like, oh my gosh, he's so changed. You said that one thing to him, and he was like, yeah, that's right. And so he's so changed. And guys will say that about chicks, and they'll go back to the relationship. And you got to ask yourself the question, if this is the result of things, then this was the cause of things. When did that change in the last week? This is years of junk. And now you're trying to tell me that they sat down with me one time, we went over a couple things, and now they're amazing? Even if you have the knowledge, application's everything. Now, I can watch something on, some of these newer vehicles on how to change the oil on a car. Used to be simple, but now they're like putting things up and under, and they're like, you have to go through this maze and around and contort your body and have a special tool and all of this kind of stuff. So you can't change the oil on your car. That's basically what it is. But I could watch all that. But now to walk out there and feel confident, like I'm doing it. Not so much, because application is different than just seeing and hearing. The doing kicks into like, I'm actually saying this knowledge is true, and I'm acting it out right now. Like, oh snap, this is big. Now, once you know something, you can't not know it, and it holds you accountable to what you know. It'll bother you. It'll be like, remember what you learned in class? Remember that? Remember how you can't do that. That's not right. But that doesn't mean your behavior will change. Behavior changes by choice and application. So we have to remember those two things. By choice and application. We learned in the last class that it's not only that you have to have that, but we don't retain information and want to make change unless we have new information. We regret the old way and we want to make a change, but we feel safe enough to do so. So the brain, what they've proven is the brain has to have permission to change. So that's when you come to a class like this and I look at you and I'm like, you got permission. No holding back. You have all rights to just go and make some changes, right? But then you have to have safety to do so. You can learn all kinds of skills regarding how you don't rip your husband's head off when you go from 1 to 10. You can learn those skills, but it's really difficult in the application part. In fact, your brain will say, I know those skills, but I'm not going to use them this time. I'll wait till next time because I am so mad right now. And it feels good to let them have it. Or vice versa. So we have to know everybody's got a bucket of pain. Everybody has been sinned against or sinned against themselves. That's another way to say it. They all have a bucket of pain. And that means you're walking around, you got the lid on, and you're like, don't nobody trigger me. Remember we talked a little bit about that last week? I can't go to church. Church triggers me. I can't go to work now because there's somebody who's acting all functional at work or asks too many questions. How is your day? Are you doing okay? I mean, because I saw you come in and it seems like, and you're like, leave me alone. I'm trying not to get triggered, right? Because you're trying to just go through the motions and not have the lid pop off. The problem is there's only so much room in your bucket of pain. So if these are all the bad memories, and it's not just bad memories, it's the things that never got resolved. So we record everything through our 5 senses, and we either record them loud or we record them quiet or at a medium level. But usually if you're being traumatized, it sounds more like this, right? And then we throw some cuss words in there, and it's very forceful, and it's in someone's face, and our mannerisms go with it or whatever. And so our recording, the way we recorded when you were 4 or when you were 3, all the way up to where you're at now, was loud. It's a loud recording. Just remind you of some of the things we talked about in the first phase. So what are your recordings like? Because if you have loud recordings, you're going to have loud reactions in your body, and you're going to want loud results. Amen? Yeah, it gets edgy. So loud results, like now. No, we're going to talk about this now. See, and then it's very forceful, and it's because we're not wanting to put up with this bucket of pain anymore. Now, some of us were raised where nobody deals with this. I was out chopping wood and doing all kinds of stuff today in some kind of, I don't know what, dust. And so I've been, every few minutes, kind of a drive, just so you know, all right? I'm not dying up here. So any case, there's, we're wanting to keep the lid on, and that's a real good goal so you don't get arrested or somebody doesn't get hurt. But you can't just put the lid on your pain and act like it'll all just go away. We'll get over it. Don't worry about it. So some of us had the loud recording, and some of us had the hiding recording where it was like, that person's, wanting to hurt me or whatever. I'm going to run away. I'm going to hide. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to have a swearing of secrecy and a vow to myself and all of these different things, which still doesn't take care of the bucket of pain. So what we usually do is we're trying to figure out, if I went here and I don't know how to get back home, I got to figure a way to get this adrenaline out. So a lot of people will punch a wall or do something like that. Like I shared in the last phase, in our house, when I was growing up, we had calendars in really weird spots because there was paneling, and you can punch right through paneling if you hit the right area. Right? So there were holes in the wall, and then we just had to adjust where pictures were hung. So other people, it's kind of embarrassing when my friends would come over. They'd be like, why is your... Yeah, well, there was a thing. There was a whole thing that took place. So we're disappointed in ourselves that we went from being triggered, the lid blew off, we couldn't control it. We tried to pull it back, but we went from 1 to 10. We get disappointed. We're like, I don't know why I always lose it. I look like I'm crazy. Right? If you start thinking you're crazy, well, that's a whole thing. If you jump from here to here and then go to here, this is where cutting happens. This is where you pull your own hair out. This is where people will pick their fingernails till they bleed and not even know they did it. This is where usage takes place. This is where I'm leaving, Elvis is leaving the building. I can feel myself floating, and I can't get back to center. I can't get grounded. I'm like leaving. And so we'll do something to cause pain that will actually cause us to retract back and be like, okay, I'm still here. So if you're wondering why, kids cut or, well, it's not only kids that cut. It started out as a fad, believe it or not, but then it's a real deal because people find out that if they lose their emotional ability to control where they're at, they didn't have the skills, their physical body was trained the other way, just went from protect yourself, just skip all the steps in between. There's no verbal judo, there's nothing that's going on that will help you out. We just go up to there. Well, now you're in a spot where you'll float real easy, and you'll just feel like things aren't real, like you're watching a movie, and it's just happening around you, and you can't figure out why you don't feel like you're a part of it. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah, add a drug to that, you're already floating. And we're all like, come back, I know you're in there, come back. And so it takes a little bit. If you were a child that never had people around you helping to ground you, what does that look like? It's like you fall off your bike, you're mad, you're disappointed, you're hurt or whatever, and I just say, buck it up. And I walk off, build a bridge, get over it, quit your whining. Any of those kinds of things. What that says is pain. Maybe your knee is bleeding or something like, I guess I don't count right at this moment, so I don't have any way to ground myself. If they don't have that skill at 4 or 5, then it's like denial kicks in and dissociation. Well, what happens with denial and dissociation is if you got a bucket that looks like this, which most people do, you can put a lid on it, but then you have to seal that with denial. And denial is where you lie to yourself. Oh, it's not as bad as what everybody says. It's not like I get mad all the time. No, I had a pretty good life, I always use this example. I was ministering at one of the jails, and there was a man in there in anger resolution class, and he said, well, do you think that this scar on my face would cause the anger problems? And I said, well, what happened? And he said, well, my mom was high on heroin, and she decided to put me and my sister in the oven. And my sister was on the bottom part, and my body came over the top, and so this is the line from the rack burned into my face. You don't think that, that's probably not going to make me have this anger problem, right? Because that was a long time ago. See, in order to survive, he literally had to go denial, 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 denial every day. Every time somebody looked at him, every time he looked in the mirror and saw that scar, I'm not going to associate with that. I'm not acknowledging that, because if I do, all of everything else is going to blow up, and I'm going to go from 1 to 10 and maybe even to the next level. And I won't be able to control it. So I have to find some way to lie to myself and say it's not as bad or whatever. A lot of times I'll have people in counseling and I'll say, so what was your childhood like? And they'll be like, it was wonderful. I remember going to the fair. And, they go on with this whole story. But, second counseling, all of a sudden, the whole story has changed. Because now the stuff that really happened is coming. Did you go to the fair? Did you do those things? Yes, you did. Were they fun? Yeah, they were fun. But the intensity of the trauma is now coming out. And it's so opposite of your story of like, no, I had a good childhood. Everything was wonderful. But denial and dissociation will do that. You'll shove that into your bucket of pain. Now, did anybody take a class when you were growing up? Junior high, senior high, kindergarten, on how do you walk up these levels and then to stay below a 5? If you're really wanting something to stop and you're very angry, I want to stop being rejected and pushed around, and I want this to stop being bullied and all of those different kinds of things, you can't allow yourself to come up here and even here and think that's going to have an effect. You're just going to hurt yourself and others. And everyone's going to be like, wow, you are messed up. Right? So there has to be some type of verbal judo. There has to be something in the first 5 steps. When you recognize this pain is so great, and I about had it with it. I'm about done. These are phrases that'll start coming out of your mouths. You know what? And then we'll make some announcement like that. I'm about done with this. And so, okay, so if we're done with this, what's your boundary going to be? Because you're done with it now. You want something to stop. The anger is there to tell you, grab a boundary. Where's your lever? I don't have one. I never had a class on boundaries. I never knew, where am I going to get this boundary? What's functional? Because the only thing that comes to my mind, even at a 5, somebody's going to get hurt. Right? And so we know that that's not a good option. Possibly the police will be involved. We know we can't go there. Okay, so if we can't go there, where can we go? We could, well, that's how people respond, because there's been no role modeling of how to stay below the 5. Same thing, I was teaching at Pine County Jail and many other places, and when I asked this question, where are you the most powerful when anger comes on? And a lot of people will say a 10. Like, get out of my way because I'm at a 10 and I'm like a locomotive. I mean, stuff's coming out my mouth. I'm going to get the job done. And actually you're not powerful at a 10. Your most powerful spot is at a 1. Because now you can still think. You can assess the situation. You're self-aware. You're aware of what that other person might be going through. So this is where parenting that looks like, I feel like a failure as a parent. That just triggered that. This so ticks me off. He's not getting good grades, and now I got to show up at the school. Boom. And then on the ride home, we're like swearing at the kid all the way home because it's going to make such a difference. Have you noticed it doesn't make a difference? They're just scared of you for now. Amen? Just for now, they're scared of you. I remember each one of us with my dad's temper. You reach this day, you're like, I ain't scared of you anymore. You don't care what happens to you, and you don't care how this is going to go down because you about had it. Right? So you about had it is that statement. But good verbal judo is found down in here, and what that is ways of dealing with a situation. You're actually dealing with it, but you're doing it without violence. You're not violating yourself or another person. So an example would be a bill collector calls you, or some dumb telephone call happens or whatever, and you're on there, and I'm tired of you people, blah, blah. You people. Well, you're talking to a person, and now we're collecting all the other times that you didn't have a good boundary. And now it's, you people always call me when I'm trying to relax, and rah, rah, rah. And we'll start going after, because our boundary says you're triggering the fact that I feel disrespected 100 times by these dumb telephone calls, right? And I don't know what to say as a boundary. I want to tell you where to go. That's what'll come up in most people. You know what? If I get a call like that again, I'm going to tell. And it's not a godly thing you're going to tell them. So it'll always try to go to all or nothing. So you say nothing because you don't want to say all. So even with kids, a lot of times, Mom's losing her mind on the kids. Dad comes in and he can't figure out what that looks like to be a good verbal judo, to stay in control of the situation, to help the wife, because you know what you're supposed to say, right? And when that doesn't happen, now we lose it, not because the kid's behavior was just so unacceptable. Because really, when you think back on the times, your parents lost it on you, or it's like, what did you do? Did you ruin world peace? Is that what happened? No, you broke a vase. Oh, we're all going to die now. But it's that level that if our training is, we got to go there because we got to solve this now, because I'm not going to be a failure as a parent. I'm tired of being the one in the family that everyone looks at and picks at and whatever. Kids, you're going to listen. Okay, those are all the wrong reasons. He needs to listen because that's a rule in the house. Sorry, dude, you're not listening, so now you lose this. Or, sorry, dude, you're not listening, Now you're going to sit and time out. Sorry, dude. You defied that over and over, and you can repeat back to me what I already asked you to do. Usually I'll have, kids do that. So what did your father say? Well, he said I'm not supposed to hit and blah, 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 but you did. Right? I'm still a believer in spankings if they're done right. A spanking here works. A spanking anywhere past here just breeds anger because you're out of control. I can remember my husband giving one of our children a spanking, and it's more about the moment than it was really, because he's not like, bam, and, slapping the kid around, but it can just be, just the thought that you got disciplined sometimes makes you cry more than the actual. Because really, I just did that, and I lived through it. Notice I'm not crying. So think about that. Here's a kid, even a little harder, whatever. No, it's a wake-up call. But they're shocked you're actually taking the time to discipline. Now, if that's what you do and you walk off, that's not true discipleship. The word disciple means a disciplined one, which means you've learned skill. So somehow that little one has to learn skill. What are you going to do the next time when Daddy asks you this? I'm not going to hit my sister, What can we do now to make this right? And then they take the skills and the steps. So you're teaching them, here's the progression. 2 + 2 is now going to equal 4, and it's going to be beautiful. And then we are going to move on. Right? What happens is when we do discipline wrong, or we've been disciplined wrong, we skip all these and we're up here, and the child can't stop thinking about how you wronged them 5 years later. Because you're a jerk, and you feel like a jerk 5 years later. When, the things that get resolved, I remember after this, one of my children got the spanking or whatever, went through sequential thinking, was trained, 2 + 2 is going to equal 4. So now you have some skills. So next time, what are you going to do? What is what I'm going to do? Right? Do you know Daddy loves you very, very much? And I don't want to see other people get hurt or you get hurt. And you give the child a hug. And guess what they do? They're like, okay. And they go off and play. But if you feel afraid they're not going to listen to you because nobody listens to you, see, these are just examples of what can be in your bucket. It works that way in a marriage, works that way in your dating, works that way with your boss or whatever. They're not going to listen to me. So you're already ramped up because you already feel unheard. So you're going to make some big statement now. Your posture starts changing. I've found, because I come from that, I was a child of rage. At the same time, the skills I have now, like I could talk to the President of the United States. I don't care. I'm not afraid if our opinions don't match. And the more relaxed you are, the more you're actually in control of yourself, the more you can stick with your own belief systems. But the fear of not having the right thing to say, and I have to stay in control of this, and they're going to take over, they're going to push me around, and you poke a dog long enough, Even if they're a golden retriever, they will bite you. You put them in a corner and you do that, right? Because there's no skill to get them out of that corner. I've sat in many meetings where someone's just cussing me out. Usually I have this posture. Okay. Because I'm not going to lose it because you're losing it. That's your problem. Which usually makes the person who's losing it more mad. But that's not my problem. I don't have to equal. I don't have to come here because there was a situation and come up here and meet you where you're at for you to listen to me. If you're not going to listen to me, I will disengage from the conversation. Wow, you are needing to walk off some adrenaline right now. Take a few minutes, get some of that adrenaline out. I am more than willing to talk to you. See, that's a skill. Anyone see your father or mother do that kind of thing? Right? Your caretaker, if they don't do it, then your brain goes to grab for a lever. Something triggered your pain, and now you want something to stop. And I don't know. Right? Because we don't know where this lever is. And so we'll wait until we're so infuriated that we will pull the biggest lever. That's why in marriages or relationships or jobs or whatever, anything where you're getting close to people, you'll, if you wait, then when you pull that lever, it sounds like this. I've had enough. And it's a big lever. We were never compatible. I'm done with this marriage. See, and that's supposed to go, I just gave you a 10. Right? We're getting a divorce. No, serious, don't even talk to me. I'm done. And these are all big levers when there's all kinds of stuff you could play around with in here, but we don't even touch it because we feel intimidated, hurt, we're afraid of the conversation. We don't have the skills. And so we just go here to protect ourselves. I always use Steven Seagal as, or Chuck Norris or different ones, as an illustration of it really is this way with martial arts. If you come into a room and all of you are against me, you don't ramp up. You're all against me. I had to figure out a way. I'm already at a 6. I don't know how, your brain's going to disappear, right? Even in the movies, they act it out just how it is. Steven Seagal is usually like this, right? That's a true thing. My son does Russian martial arts, and it's a true thing. You would never know that person is feeling anything because they're really not feeling anything. They're in control of their self. That's a very powerful spot to be in. And what they're doing is assessing how out of control you are. And to the degree you're out of control, lets them know how they're going to defend themselves. Right on? This is where sometimes police officers never got taught this. They got taught all kinds of stuff, and you'll get that one guy who feels like his life is being threatened, Let's just put him in a spot where, if you didn't get these skills, but now we're going to put you in a life-threatening spot, and then the whole of America is going to expect you to have good behaviors. Think about that. He's still a person just because he wears a badge, right? And if we were put in that same thing, how would you handle it? You ever asked yourself that? I'm not making an excuse for poor behavior, but what I am saying is we can be an expert on things we've never done. That doesn't work out well. So, whatever the situation is, wherever there's adrenaline involved, if you're an EMT, if you're a nurse or whatever, and you're trying to save a life, there's adrenaline involved. And so you have to learn the skill in a different way of hey, I didn't have any adrenaline, then they triggered me, and now I just jumped up to this. It's more like there's probably going to be some adrenaline. So now I got to master the adrenaline while I am trying to stay calm and keep that person calm. That's why a good caretaker in those spots, you can be like bleeding out your artery, just pumping into the room. And they're like, sir, what's your name? Right? And it can look dumb to people who don't have that skill set because they'll be like, right now you're asking that? Can you see me right now? My name is so-and-so. I need you to look at me, sir. Something like that is really saying I'm bringing it to a level of calm. If we didn't learn those skills, then before we really dig into it, this is why I'm going over this again, we got to know we got a bucket of pain that could go off at any time. Oh, snap. And we got to assess that and call a spade. How much pain and how much am I working on that? Where am I getting new information? Well, no, I got it under control. Really? What does under control? Means I can keep the lid on it. That's all that means. Nobody healed it. Nobody unpacked it. Nobody put it away, but we have the lid on. Houston. Then you white knuckle it. And then some of the anger management classes really are different than anger resolution. I don't know about anger resolutions, the ones out there, because I gave it that name. Because I was irritated, see, I'm at a level, on the lower level, with the fact that we're not including how we resolve the anger inside of us. But I'm just going to talk at you instead of to you and tell you the things you need to do so you don't get angry. And don't cuss at somebody, and don't do this, and make sure you go, customer's always right. No, they're not. I'm sorry, but the customer is not always right. And neither is the person selling or whatever. So we ought to know that, okay, so sometimes, when I'm dealing with something as a customer, sometimes what's happening isn't right. But I can't go to this level to deal with it. So people walk away and they don't deal with it at all. Well, where are you going to put that now? In your hoarding pile? And maybe you don't want to put it in the hoarding pile. Maybe you want to think about it. So you bring it home with you to your wife or your husband, to your kids. And then they say or do one thing and you lose your mind on them. And really, when you look back, it doesn't have anything to do with that little thing they did. It had to do with you were already carrying something, and the slow burn of the pilot light went off. That's when we walk in and we kick the dog, or, like, who let their socks lay in here? I told you kids, this door's always got to be blah, blah, and speeches start happening. We start picking at everything. Now, on a good day, well, I always call it $1 million day. So that's that day where you feel like someone gave you $1 million. All the socks and everything are still laying there and they don't bother you. Have you noticed that? And even if they did, it's like, yeah, we got to get to that. That probably needs to be cleaned up. It's a different view. But when you're not having $1 million day. Now what? Now it's going to take some skills. And you got to figure out, what are you carrying from where? Are you carrying stuff that you didn't unpack yet? The thing that happened at the grocery store last night, thing that happened at the gas station the day before, and you said, that's fine, I'll just walk away from it. No, you didn't resolve it. It needs to go in the trash, into a memory bank of closure. There needs to be some, I forgive that person, or something that says, I just brought that to close. Otherwise, I always say it's like Pac-Man, right, chasing you. And eating up everything. And you got to bring the mouth to close. Done. Game over. Right? And then a new thing comes in and that's how it feels in your brain. You're like, Pac-Man won't shut up. There's like a little ghost coming after you, haunting you with it. And it's just the game needs to be over. But if we didn't learn that skill, we learned the skill of stuffing, now we're in trouble. How many of you know your stuffers? A lot of stuffers up in this house. So now we have to ask the question, why? Was processing the problem never allowed? Did you come to the conclusion you're not going to be heard anyway? Nobody cares about your feelings. Shut up and take it. It could be, if you're a woman, it could be like, you don't have a voice in this house. This is a man-driven house. There was a lot of that went on. But let me tell you what I'm seeing now. Women-driven houses. Not equal partners. It's like the guy just wanders around. And I don't want to make her mad. But you'll only carry that so long, and when you lose it, you will lose it big. Then everyone will go, oh, honey, Cheryl, are you okay? I didn't know he was so abusive. Who was at the bottom of that was the person agitating it and constantly taking control. See, I call a spade a spade. There is no lobs. I've had people come to the class and like, she's the woman. She's going to take the woman's side. No, I've been helping with domestic violence and stuff for years, and I will call it. I'll call it. But we've seen that role modeled. It could be at Thanksgiving at grandma's house, and you have a dominating grandma. Nobody really wants to go there, but it's grandma, and she's kind of like, the person that runs everything, and she runs everything. And there's like a resentment. So as people get older, they start popping off. They're like, I ain't going to grandma's. And then they get criticized by the other ones. Why? Because you're getting out of it. You need to be here. If we got to do this, you got to do this, kind of thing. And it's not a respect of what's happening. And it's not a retraining of grandma. We train people how to treat us. So when you came in here, if you don't know me or don't know me well, I already trained you how to treat me. Didn't I? What did I say to you? I don't know. It's just a feeling that emanates. I'm not a mean person, but I am a person who has boundaries. And I'm a person who will call it. And I'm a person who will disclose it. And I'm a person who will say it. Right? So that's already like, she's one of those people. But if you come in to a place and they got you pegged as a victim, that's a different deal, isn't it? Or you got that sign that's blinking on your forehead that comes, come hurt me. And then I'll get really mad. There are people who seek people out like that. They're attracted to the weakness. So another one I had is, I get a lot of comments over the years. They're funny to me. But, it's just assessment. We perceive first. Then we decide what we receive off of what we perceived. So if you saw me for the first time and you're like, you had a perception of me. And out of that perception in the hour that I spoke or whatever, you received from that through your filter. Everyone receives something different because everyone's filter is different. But you perceive first, then you receive. So it's real important that we know that's how our brain works. And what does it perceive out of? Your perception is filtered through this. Did you know that? This is your filter right here. The good memories are already logged in there, but all these things that are unresolved, that's how you see people. That's your filter. That's what makes you feel threatened. That's what makes you feel hurt easier. Or you're going to get rejected, or I don't want to go to that wedding. It's always a bad experience, or whatever it is that comes out of the memories and pain. So the more you unpack, the more you've settled. The more you settle, there's less hoarding in the brain, which means it's not taking up so much space, time, and energy, right? And you'll be more at peace. And then when somebody says something, oh, genius. Or they wave at you funny as your car is going by with their finger. It's not an instant like, it's just like, wonder what their day is like. Yeah, you ever watch some of the moms when they're driving, they're like, and they're doing the over the back seat with the nook, and they're driving and they're trying to get it in the baby's mouth on the way to daycare. This one over here wants a blanket. The one in the back, I'm hungry. And we'll be driving, just a single person, and we're mad at them. Well, get off the road then if you got all that going on. Well, that's like, well, don't have a family. Don't try to balance anything. See, it's called grace. You can assess that just in a little bit, be like, oh, they got all that going on in there, and that's what's happening. I'm just going to pass them, and you have to have a bird about it. But if your training is, I'm a victim, everyone's out to get me, you're mad at that person. They personally pulled out in front of you just to get at you. That's how we feel. They just got my goat. Well, why do you have a goat? Get rid of it. Right? So there's something about the pushing of the button. They pushed my button. Why do you have a button? Take the button away. You don't have a button? Can't be pushed. Everybody has a breaking point. I'm not a superhero, but I do work on this every day. I taught a lot of classes, and I have to apply it because it's in my life for sure. But something is going to trigger something here. It isn't, even when we come to God, and like I prayed and I asked God to come into my life, so now I don't ever have to deal with this. Really? That is your information. If I took this information out of your brain, half of you would be gone. It'd be like, because that's what built your neurons in your brain, the good stuff and the bad stuff. And the bad stuff is just waiting to be filed. And what fires together, wires together. So if rejection started to happen down here in the early years, you can bet it's a building form or abandonment or whatever it is. So we jump up here. So, but really, we hate these feelings, and so that's when it comes up, I want something to stop. See, in the Bible, God got angry. He was never out of control. Well, then why did he blow up a city? He just lifted his hand off that city. Because he's not going to participate in something that's unholy, so he lifted his hand. He's lifting his hand in some areas on the United States right now. He's also moving in areas where the miraculous is taking place, which is so cool. But he who stiffeneth his neck, right, often, Proverbs says, and that's, you're just stiff, I'm not going to be stubborn or whatever, and you do that often with him, will be cut off, and that without remedy. That's pretty intense, huh? But it shows he has boundaries. It shows he's mean. So the better my boundaries are, the meaner people think I am. You ever have that? You just walk in, and you can be really calm, and you'll be like, we don't do that here. And they're like, I don't care. You don't care about me. And it just goes through the roof, and you're like, that's just a rule. We don't do that here. So if you're at your workplace, it goes like that. It just says, no skill level here. There's something missing. There's no skill, and we need to get some skill. And we'll be talking about in the weeks to come what happens when we go here, because a lot of people do just skip this. Anyone here experience blackouts? Yeah? Yeah, where you're so angry, and actually what you're saying is I'm so hurt and I'm re-experiencing the trauma, which is making me so mad. My whole body's just shaking and blackout. What that is the brain said that you just took up too much space, time, and energy. We fired up this whole engine, and it can't support it. It's like revving up a car in the middle of freezing cold January. You can blow the engine like that. Just letting the chicks know. I got that speech when I was growing up over and over, in case you didn't get that speech. Because there's been, I had a friend who, that's what she did. Because there's something with that and thermostats. Thermostats, the higher you turn them up, the quicker they warm the house, right? No. It doesn't warm the house any quicker if you put it on 100 degrees. Now, it's just going to come up right now. It warms the house at the same speed. Then you'll forget it's on 92. It's really hot in the house. Well, why'd you turn it up? So just turn it on where it goes, and it'll warm up, right? So, but if we didn't know that, our belief system would be go hot right away. Rev the engine as hard as you can when it's 30 below. I just hold on the gas, early in the morning, you're going to hear a big and then something ain't going to run right. So at the same time, it's the same way with our brain. Your brain is made like a computer. In fact, they designed computers by what they know about the brain. So if that's true, and it is, you're sending new information, and it's pulling up all those old files, and little spinny thing is going, right? Sometimes it'll just get stuck. You don't even get to figure out where you're going. You're just like, I can't. That's right, I remember that. You're like in shock all over again because you're reliving those different files. But then when you allow yourself to feel it, if you don't have the skills next, you are going to go from 1 to a 10 or on up. Amen. So are you an evil person if you go from 1 to a 10? Absolutely not. But we have been trained, if that's our training and that's what happens, you're a bad person, you're evil, and people should just stay away from you because you have a temper problem. That's so false. If we do that in that area, then it should be equal in every other weakness. Then what we'll find out is there ain't nobody left. I guess I got to hang out with myself. And then you'll find out, I can't hang out with me. I got a temper thing. Or I've got this going on or whatever. See, grace covers this. It doesn't make excuses for it. And it actually helps people who go boom, boom to here if they're surrounded by people who have good boundaries and still love. Because if you go boom, boom, and you go here, and I go, just get out of my face. Never come back here again. Well, all I did is reinforce that movement, didn't I? And it's going to get explosive. Even more so because they came for help, and it didn't go down right, and now here we are. How many of you swear when you get mad? This is an honest class, right? Okay, do you swear otherwise, just for kicks and bubbles, or just mainly when you get mad? So what trained us that these amazing words are going to make a difference in that situation? You ever think about that? I mean, it does something in the brain, because I grew up with cussing all around me, and I participated for sure. And especially if you're angry, and you always got to throw the name of God in there somehow, because you're pulling the biggest lever ever, right? If you put God in front of something, or Jesus, there, I just pulled the biggest lever ever. There, I'm not even scared that I used your name in vain. Yeah. Which shows we're at a desperate spot. So people will do that when they're trying to explain what they're mad about. I never hear them cuss otherwise, but all of a sudden the F-bomb will get thrown or something like that. No, I'm so sorry, Pastor Mary. Don't apologize to me. I'm not in your head. I'm not experiencing what's going on, and I'm not your God. Right? If that's all it takes, we just experienced, Dave and I, and but if that's all it takes, not that he did that. We were talking to somebody. Like Dave, he's like, zoom in on him. No, I'm just kidding. But we were talking to somebody and they apologized, right? Stop. Now, I'm not inviting you to cuss a blue streak, but what I am saying is it came out which says, I am so angry. I really want something to stop. And I'm reaching for big words. You ever hear baby cuss? See, I ran preschool, and then we had 12 kids for a long time and different things, and worked in the nursery and stuff like that. But it is interesting when they get mad, and they might not even be imitating what they hear in the household, but you can hear their anger and their little gibberish that they're doing. And you're like, whoa. Well, get it out. I don't know what's happening in there. But they've had it, and they'll get really frustrated. And kids who bite, most of the time, bite out of frustration. They feel like something's being controlled and they can't control it. Someone's going to take their toy or whatever. And literally, I've never seen them just go, I'm going to bite you. Their little arms will just shake, and they're like, huh, and he's going to bite, and you go running for the preschool table, right? Because they might be just coloring. This kid feels threatened, and all of a sudden, here comes the teeth, right? And you got to get there in time. You might get there in time, you might not. But the whole frustration that child's feeling is, this situation's controlling me, and I have no control, so I have to pull the bigger lever. My fist isn't going to do it. My hand doesn't work. I've been corrected for that. I can lay on the floor and throw a fit. They're not going to stop. But if I bite them and they figure out that there's a big old reaction when they bite, there you go. Yeah? So we look for what lever can we pull that's going to give the biggest reaction. And then we tell ourselves, I can't do that anymore. Once we identify that, I can't do that anymore. That's a crazy lever. I don't even know why I went there. Yeah, so what are you going to do? Just not do that anymore. I know, but what are you going to do in its place? Just try not to do that. That's usually as far as we go without a skill, right? So I know it sounds crazy. I mean, Christians have Christian swear words. I had a real bad habit just going around saying, oh, my God. And in the world, I'm telling you, everywhere you look, say, oh, my God, my God, my God. And it's constant. Right? So I say, oh, my Lanta, right? Or I say something like that. Well, that's really a placement so that I don't do that other thing. Well, you have to give your brain a replacement before change will come. So if you spank a child or yell at a child or discipline a coworker or something like that, you're going to have to get this quota done and all this kind of stuff. But you don't give them options of how they're going to fulfill this and make them feel safe enough to fulfill it, you're not going to see any results. Right on? Yeah, so we have half the problem, but we don't have the full equation as to how to get this to stop. So verbal judo is something that's taught, and or you have to be around some pretty amazing people to catch it. So it can be caught where you go, hey, that's a good option of something to say. I didn't know what else to say. So I said, that's what I always say. Now my family is all about sayings, and some of them are pretty funny. And some are pretty bad. They're bad funny, but, that's how it is, right? And I can remember just having word pictures drawn. If my father would be angry or my relatives would be angry, they'd start out, you're useless as, and then there's going to be a word picture. You couldn't fight your way out of a wet paper bag. Like, instead of addressing, you didn't take the garbage out appropriately, or you didn't hoe the garden the way that I asked you to. Which way did I ask you to? Right? And if they don't answer them, now you have a whole nother issue we're dealing with. And we'll get back to this one, but now there's defiance. So, well, you can sit here until you're ready to talk. I'm good with that. I got stuff I got to do. And you just keep walking up the ladder of it, but we don't go to a 10 right away. But if we don't know that, it's like, so there's something about just coming in, seeing a poor behavior, or what you assume is a poor behavior, and the lid just flies off, and we say things to draw word pictures because this person's so dumb they'd never get it if we don't draw this picture. How many of you have heard this, the saying, you're useless as tits on a boar? Some people don't understand that, but farmers are, yeah, that makes sense, right? Or there's different statements like that draw a word picture where your brain locks into it and you're like, oh, how do you say that about me? Now I got your attention. So now that you're hurting, I'm going to drive another point home and you are going to listen to me. See, it's a skill. It's a bad skill, but it's a skill. Right? So when we say, okay, let's take that one thing and learn a new skill, and the garbage didn't get taken out or got put in the wrong spot or whatever, how are you going to address that person? If in your mind you're already saying, I don't know, then we know, right? Just a self-assessment, like, okay, well, nothing was role modeled to you. You don't have a skill in place, so don't expect yourself to be a superhero if you go home tonight and the garbage is put in the wrong spot. Something's going to go down. So we have to be able to call a spade and do a self-assessment to be able to say, okay, all right, I'm going to have to address this. Lots of questions. I like to use a lot of questions. So what's up with the garbage? Just nice and calm, just even. What's up with the garbage? That's different than, what is your blanket problem? How many times do I have to tell you about this garbage? I am sick and tired. We're always sick and tired. Or fed up. Like we've been eating this whole garbage thing and now I'm full. These are weird little pictures, but we're saying it to draw a picture for that other person that says, I have no more room for you and your behavior. I am fed up. What could you replace that with? How could you say something positive? So we're going to work on this in the weeks to come, because trauma gives us an excuse to want to protect ourselves, because this is the boundary. I want something to stop, and I'm really mad about it, and I have the right to protect myself. Yes, but how are you going to go about that? Well, I'm not letting people. And how are you going to go about that? It's going to keep ramping up, and some crazy, wild stuff's going to come out of you, and you can get yourself in trouble. Rather than, how can I calm myself down so I have some logical position, and even if the person loses their mind, I'm stable. I got it. Right? So for heavy trauma, sometimes opening this can is just somebody asking you a question in class. or your counselor gets with you and asks you something, or your wife or your husband just says, hey, where were you today? I don't have to tell you where I was. I'm not a little kid, you know. You can't come up in my face and expect me to tell, right? If those are your responses, you're afraid of something because of what's in the bucket of pain. I'm just giving these examples this week so you can think about it. Why do I respond the way that I do? Now, last time when we did phase 1, and I'm just going to revisit this, part of going up that ladder, or even recognizing you got some anger going on, you want something to stop, is what does your body look like when you're at a number 1 versus a number 5? Did you ever think about that? Now, you could describe the people around you. Like, you could draw a picture. You'd be like, you know what, my husband, this is exactly what he does. So when we took a class, my husband and I, we had to do that. And so he let me go first. And I was like, well, you do this thing where you lean forward and then your eyes come down. And then you'd be like, you know, I'm not. Your words get short a little bit. And he's like, okay. And then he goes, but what you do when I know you're starting to escalate is you say something and then you cock your hip. And I go, I do not. And then I was like, where do I put myself right now? I already went to a 1. I'm like, I do not. And I had to straighten up. Then he said, if you're really mad, and this is so true, right? Even with skill, if you see me do this with my hand, I don't know if that's a trigger finger. I don't carry a weapon here, but, you know, there's just something like, all right, this is my brain thinking about stuff. Like I'm about to process some action here. And that's so my hip will come out like that. I'll lean forward. I might cock my head if somebody's coming up into my face and saying something or whatever. And I will give you a nice, skillful way to get out of that situation. But I will also let you know, don't push me. Because I'm at a 2. And I'm not going to go to a 5 because of you. So we better get this resolved right now. Do I work that skill professionally all the time? No, and neither do you. Right? So that's why we need classes where we're like, oh, okay, we're going to try this again, you know. And then after a while, we learned, okay, so if that's what I look like and that's what you look like, then there's that body action. It's like, okay, all right, I got to go de-escalate. I'm at a 3. I'm going to walk a 3 off and get the adrenaline out of me, and then I'll come back and we'll have a conversation that does not come up above this voice tone. But when one person talks like this, and it's not even how loud, it's the things you say and how you say it, that begs for that other person to come up to that. Right? Well, I'm going to listen to you. Yeah, you are. And so now we're at that same level. I mean, somebody's got to be mature enough to be down here and be going, okay, yeah. And they're still slurring and doing all that kind of stuff. But now with my husband, if that happened, I'd say something like, okay, but we have some adrenaline going on, and we have to have safety first. So we both talk like this. So if you got to go work on a car or something right now, would be the time to do that. Right? He's telling me those things. And sometime when I go to talk and I go to answer or start a conversation, I'd be like, I got to go for a walk. Because I already knew, I am talking to you at a 4 right now, and I don't even know why, right? It was over something stupid. But if you don't know yourself, you can't grab a hold of this. This is what trauma does. Now, we started out talking about trauma bonding. Trauma bonding makes you not want to pay attention to yourself or get to know you. Because you don't know when you're going to be traumatized again. So all your effort is watching on who is going to hurt me. I got to pay attention to all you people. And a lot of us are enablers, so what we do is like, what all these people want. All right, I got to give them this because that's what they want, and that'll keep me from getting hurt. Have you been building on yourself? Do you know yourself? No, I don't have time for that. I got to work on this whole thing. I ain't going to just sit here and let people hurt me. Yeah, but if you don't develop you will never have the boundaries. And guess what? People are going to hurt you. You don't have the power to prevent that. I gotta let that hang so it soaks. If you have that belief system that somehow you got so skillful at enabling and meeting everyone's needs and being all about their emotional state and not about yours, okay, we got this covered. You really believe that? That's a false belief. You can't maintain that. And then when you get off that ride and you're like, I'm not doing everybody else's emotional state. I'm going to do mine. I'm going to get to know me. Now, who am I? And we'll get frustrated because we never got to know why these things, when these things, who these things, all of those different things that the brain asks, and how we're going to unpack it. We never figured that out. Then we're frustrated because I don't want to know me. When I go to get to know me, that's the crap that comes up. I don't want to know that. I want to know this amazing person. So the harder I serve other people, if they compliment me, then I go, see, I'm okay. Then why is this still here? Why does this mess with your head at night where you can't sleep? Why does this affect your job choices? Your schooling? I mean, in here, you can come to the belief system. I'm 58 years old. If I want to go back to college or want to go do something, I'll go do it. But a lot of people will develop out of a pain. They'll be like, well, 58 now. About time to turn it in. Like, what? I know people who are running up mountains in marathons and they're 80 years old. And it never crossed their mind that they should be like, I'm 80. That's when you can't do anything. See, it comes out of the pain. These things here, we're working so hard to not be triggered because this isn't resolved. And so that we have to protect our pain. It's our precious. Right? And we hate it, but it's our precious. And so we have to keep it there because we know if we don't keep an eye on it all the time, this could happen. And I always look like a jerk when I do that. I'm just thinking of some times that I got up to leave for work, and the night before I looked like a jerk when I did that. Right? And so then I see my husband, I'm like, hey, I got to go. He's like, okay. Awkward. Because you don't know how to face the fact you lost your mind the night before. Because I did. I totally wigged out. And then I couldn't even figure it out. I'm like, I don't even know I said half the stuff I said. And, we can blame it on hormones. Hormones do that, especially for women. They will exaggerate. If you feel something at a 5, it'll turn it into a 50 right now. And then 2 weeks after that, you're fine. But there were things that would trigger out of this that I didn't have any answers for, and I was younger than my age group, which we'll talk about again next week, when I went to handle it. So then I handled it like I'm going to throw a fit like a little kid. Or when this pops open and stuff starts coming out, it comes out crazy. Right? Because now that's just like the time, and then we go way back to when we're little, and then last week you said to me, and blah, blah, blah. The person that you're saying all this to can't even track you. They're like, you're like machine gunning them. And sometimes it's a howitzer. I'm like, there's something different. Where that person is like, I can't even interpret you right now, so I love you, but you need to go away for a bit. So it happens. The more pain we have, the more arrested development we are, which we'll talk about, the more it's hard to keep the lid on. And really, is that the goal? Is the goal really in the end to be like, I got to make it through this life with the lid on? I haven't lost my mind for 4 months, Dave. Don't anyone trigger me because we have to get the lid stayed. Rather than just like, hey, I puked that out. Wow, that was intense. Got that out. I was toxic. So now I got to reboot this whole thing and figure out where we're going to go from here. My husband like, yeah, it's a great idea. Great idea. But it's workable, right? It's workable. So if I lose my mind temporarily, I got to go find it. I can't pretend this isn't part of my mind, though. So what we do is we lose our mind, then we're like, how can I put on a face at work, at church, everywhere? What face am I going to wear? Sometimes people will come off of a big argument. They'll go get their hair cut, change their clothing, do something because it feels like I'm moving something around. Yeah, you are, but you're not getting at the real deal. You're just moving something around in the physical when really it's the heart that has to have the change. Amen? Any questions so far? I can tell this is like, okay, get out of my house. That's usually what people tell me afterwards. Get out of my house. Did you have a camera in my house? No, this is just what happens in everybody. Everybody gets triggered, right? It's just this is starting to be made fun of because people are like, you're triggering me. Try to get out of stuff. Manipulative. Now, if you're triggered, you'll know it because it feels like PTSD. It feels like a panic disorder. It feels like, oh, my Lord, I am reliving what happened to me. Somebody help me. Rather than, you're all triggering me and I can't handle it. Well, let's learn a different skill then. How can you get to a point where you can handle it? Because I'm going to get triggered. I can't hide. And now it's welcoming of like, whoa, something, I don't like always when it shows up, but something just majorly got triggered. Thank you, God, for pointing that out. There is something going on in my subconscious where my recordings are messed up, and I got to figure out why I think that way about myself. See, if we just talked to ourselves like that or just had that reasoning, it would become simpler. But that's where the anxiety mixed with the anger goes 1 to 10, and we're like, I can't be triggered. No, because if I do that, then I'm going to hurt myself or others. I'll probably go use. This is getting out of control. Don't say anything to me. I'm scared of me. Right? You got to take that whole thing away. Not going to be scared of me. If I lose it, I lose it. If I lose my mind, I'll go find it. It's laying around here somewhere. I'll just pick it up, look at it, and go, oh, that's the memory. That's why that would have hurt. That's what caused me to feel that way. There's got to be a lie attached to this thing, because when you unpack it, which we'll be talking about, grabbing a memory, and as it comes up and you unpack it, you're also trying to figure out why wasn't it unpacked before? Because I didn't know what the truth was about it. See, to unpack something and put it away, you go, there's the truth, and check out the lie that was tied to that thing. I've been believing the lie this whole time, but here's the truth now. So I am going to unpack it and put it away or throw it out. The brain has to know what to do. So that's part of the skill of anger resolution. And we just barely are touching it. We're going to take our time on this because you're hardwired into this bucket. So we're playing around in an area that you had a lid on for a long time. And we don't like to cry and we don't like to get mad. So it went in ugly, so how are you going to get it out? Pretty? Yeah, I'm just going to, could you pray with me? Suddenly all the thoughts just float away and you're just wonderful. No, usually when I'm praying with people is because it hurts like crazy. And you got to go through it to get to the answer, right? If you conceal it and don't reveal it, then nothing heals it. Amen? So we're not going to go around concealing things. Now, do you go to work and just let the lid off whenever you want? Hey, just letting out my emotions. No, there needs to be some control. So you start telling your brain something like this. I can't deal with that right now, but I am going to deal with it. If you lie to yourself, and it sounds like denial, it'll say, we're not dealing with that. That's going to blah, blah, blah. And I don't see where I should have to. And we'll start talking trash to ourselves rather than, wow, that almost ruined my day at work. So apparently it's a priority. So I got to schedule something here with myself and my God and a book or some training or something, because that should not have responded like that. See, self-counsel for yourself. Does that make sense? So far, we're digging around in the brain. This is the area I'm giving you permission to visit. Do you have to go in here like an archaeologist and start digging stuff up? No, please do not. Stuff will come up on its own. And how the brain wants to do that, it'll pull the files and it'll just send them forward and it'll send it up. The guy in the factory, the little guy at the desk, will send it up and you'll be like, oh man, I got to deal with this. And then closure needs to happen. So in phase 2, we're going to get deeper into how do you take apart these files as they come up? What is some good verbal judo so I never get up to a 5? If you don't know what to say, you'll just feel like a volcano that's going to be blocked. And we'll get to rage later. I mean, especially if you've had blackout stuff, that really says the chemicals in your brain cannot, you're so upset, you're so wounded. If you go there, the factory just goes, we got to shut it down. They're blowing up this, and you just shut everything down. And it'll just black out. Now, is it still operating as a subconscious? Yes, it is. But it's not leaving the conscious mind to recognize it because it knows if you do, you will lose it. Right? So blackouts are real, and they do happen. So they can also happen from drugs and alcohol and whatever, and now you're mad, and it goes there quicker. So I want you to be thinking about this week. What do you look like when you first start getting angry? In fact, right now, anybody know what's the first thing you do when you all of a sudden something hits your ear and you're like, what? Just that pause moment of what's your next move? Does your eyebrows come down? Anybody got one you can share? You tense up? What does that look like, Russ? Your breathing changes. Flaring nostrils. Some people's ears get red. They haven't even made a move, and you're like, whoa, someone's going to die right now. Because their ears just go really red. Or if you feel trauma has been triggered, a lot of times people will talk to me, and they talk very calm like this, and they feel like they got it all together, but they have red patches all over their neck and chest because the adrenaline is so high, and they think, no, I got it, I'm having it under control, and you're like, you can have a heart attack like that. I'm not even jiving. Like, you need to get some oxygen and breathe. So it takes an hour to an hour and a half, depending on your chemical makeup, to get the adrenaline out. So when somebody's adrenalized and I say, no, we're not getting out of it, we're dealing with this right now, you're just asking for trouble. I don't want to deal with an adrenalized person. Come back and we'll talk about it once you're at a 1. And let's figure out some skills to stay in that zone, please. Right? A lot of times people will egg the other person on and do critical things, just little comments, little something, so it escalates that other person, so the attention is off of them, and now it's on that person, and you're like, see, you're losing your mind again. You're the one who needs counseling. You always get like that. And they're like, what? Well, no, I did not. I never even gave you a look. Huh? That's passive-aggressive. So we'll be talking about that, too, what passive-aggressive looks. I was raised aggressive. There wasn't very much passive. So if I was going to skip this, there wasn't a lot of skill for and here's how I'm going to manipulate. I'm like, I'm in your face, and I might go to jail. It's kind of like that. And so we're going to go there, right? But other people, they're like, no, I never go any of that. I don't know what you're talking about. No, I filled that paperwork out. See, I had to get the blame around here, and blah, 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 blah. And they're lying like a dog. And it's passive-aggressive. How it's aggressive is I'm going to make you so angry that you look like you're crazy, and then in the end I'm going to go see, that's the problem. That's the difference between me and you. I don't have to get all upset like you do. You need help. And just being told you need help will escalate the crud out of you. I'll be like, I'll tell you who needs help. It's like that. So our goal is to stay here. Our goal is to start identifying what's the theme in your life. Is it abandonment? Is it rejection? Is it not being heard? Is it being shunned, put away? Is it not being enough? Whatever, because a lot of times there's themes in here. And if somebody triggers one, they pair up with the other files and they slam down on the desk of your brain. It's a big old stack, and they'll be like, deal with this now. And the files start opening up. And that's why we sound like we're crazy at that point. We're like, in the summer of 72, you did this. And I remember the time you had your green shirt on and you were standing there, and we're just reciting files is all we're doing. We're not even on the subject, but they got triggered. And now we're going to talk about all of them. That doesn't get us anywhere. So we got to back up the train, take a breath, and be like, what is the real issue? Well, there's 105 issues. Yeah, but we're not talking about those right now. We can get to those. What's the real issue? Well, I overspent at Walmart, and I was afraid you're going to get mad at me, so I feel controlled. And then I'm mad at myself because I feel out of control. There's the real issue. Let's make a plan around that real issue. But we don't go there. We're like, you're always judging me. See? Criticizing how I spend. You don't understand what I go through. And it'll do that. Or the person is controlling, and they're like, I don't want you spending anything. You don't need all that crap. And the speeches go back and forth. And they're hurtful. And once you hurt the other person, they're already in trauma mode. They'll only stay a victim so long, but when they rise up, it gets crazy up in the house. They're like, I'm the victim. You know what? Not today. And then out comes the sword, and you're like, everybody run, People who don't get mad easy, that are more passive, it's like the golden retriever. Poke them a little bit, kids poking their eye, pulling on their tongue, whatever. You're like, aren't they great with kids? It's a golden retriever. They're such a good dog. Do that for a while. That dog will reach a point where it's going to snip at somebody. It's going to let them know, back off, right? But it's a golden retriever. It would never do it. No, it will. Does that make sense? So you're looking for what triggers you, what's been in here, how fast do you get to here, and what is your first thing that you do? First couple things that you do. Mine is the hip, the cocked, and then there goes the hand, either right or left. Sometimes I got two holsters. They're there. I was raised by a gun dealer, so that would make sense, right? Watch a lot of Westerns. So I don't know how that's in my subconscious, but it's like, And then if I do this, that's a way of me just like, I got to pacify myself right now because I don't want to say what's coming to my head. And that's gotten so much better just because of the love of God. The more I get to know him, the more I realize I don't have to talk trash to other people. It never goes anywhere anyway. Let's stand. God, show us what keeps triggering in our households. Show us why we jump so fast. What skills are we missing? But show us, Lord God, what's in our bucket of pain. And many times it's way back. It's not today. It's not what's going on right now. It's we have to peel the onion to get to the core of this thing, and it stinks. In fact, it gets so strong when we start peeling it, our eyes water, and we feel like we can't see. God, help us during this time to grab the skills that we need and know that we're forgiven for the skills we don't have. We're forgiven. We just come with a right heart now, Lord God, and just say, I'm open and I'm teachable. In Jesus' name, amen. So I keep advertising Summerfest. Please look for the flyers out there. We are putting some stuff together today. I'm like kind of sunburned and was chopping stuff and moving stuff with my hubby because we're building an axe throwing area. We do not want to have to call people like yourself, so we're trying to build it in a skillful way. So anyone have any experience with that, let us know, but we're we're doing that. And maybe we first thought knife throwing, and then we're like, that could get too wild. You know, a little more controlled with the axe or the hatchet. So we're going to do that. It sounds like the potato guns are coming. The Friday night is going to be praise and worship and prayer, but we're hoping to have some vendors out for that. You know, that sell Christian T-shirts and things like that. So it'll kind of have a little bit of a fair feeling. And the Heaps Italian Ice is going to be sold that night. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff I could keep naming that will be happening. And then Saturday night, during this, we will not have church. It's all on our property. We're right off of County Road 6, south of Delbo. So we're going to bus people in, and we're hoping Friday night and Saturday people will bring out collector cars and motorcycles. That's what we're after. We want to see your bikes. We want to see what you got hiding in what you got in that garage, you know? And so I just had a memory of one of my sons was being funny and walked up to, this is when we were at a big event. I'm like, what is he doing? Of course, he was a teenager at the time, so he's trying to be funny. And walked up to somebody who was driving a van and said, what you got under that hood? And he started looking under there like it was very intense, just to be funny, because he likes to look at that stuff anyway. But it was a van, and it was an old one. And so all the teenagers were laughing. But, you know, it's fun to look at that. We got a couple guys at the church that have some really cool cars. And so come on out with them. We'll even let you rev your engine a little bit, since it's not January, right? We can do that. And then Sunday morning, Word of Life will be closed, and we will be under the big tent on our property. So we're praying for no rain. And we'll have the full band there. We're hoping right now I'm waiting to hear from Todd Finney, who is Lakota, and he's very good at music and travels all over and has an awesome testimony. So we're hoping to have him on Saturday night. And then NAMA will be there, Native American Ministerial Association, and some other churches, and Changing Gates with their horses. And yeah, so come on out, all right? All right, but grab the flyers in the back. Those are our basic ones. Have a blessed week.